Warning. The following is extremely addictive content. The original Savage Podcast may cause increased levels of success, happiness, and completely transform your life. You've been warned.
Everybody, you're back here on the original Savage Podcast. I cannot wait for today's episode. I'm so fired up because I know this one's going to be absolutely incredible. I've been waiting to have a trainer, somebody that works day to day, transforming people's golf swings, lives, whatever it might be. Today is golf swings, but I know that this is going to be different because this person has to work within other people's perspectives to make lasting change. So I know that you're going to get a ton out of it. So I'm super excited. Harrison, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us all about yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it. To give everyone a little bit of background, my name's Harrison. I currently live in South Florida. I've been here for 7 years now. A lot of what I do, I call it performance golf coaching. My idea behind that is really to help each individual, not just with their swing, but really help them understand the holistic approach behind their game. It all started when I was 18 years old, which is a little late compared to what everyone says to me. When I was growing up, I had played a bunch of different sports. I was very active as a kid. And as I got older, I had some friends who were interested in playing golf, and they said, hey, we should really go out to the driving range. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this old man hobby. It's not for me. And I ended up going out there with them, and I just became obsessed with hitting the golf ball well and understanding what went behind that. And that became I would say a healthy obsession for me. I decided, you know what, I want this to be a part of my career. I want to do this in my lifetime. I had moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I went to the Golf Academy for a few years, got my teaching degree, and then worked my way down the coast to South Florida. And I've been here ever since. I've worked at a couple courses, just kind of getting myself situated and understanding what really went behind the business side of golf. And then once I started to kind of funnel in and get my focus on golf, I said, I really want to teach. And I've been doing it. I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome. It's so funny how things work out. Like, obviously, booking you on this podcast, had no idea that you were in Myrtle Beach for a while, and I definitely didn't know the story about you starting at 18 because that's how I am. Like, I played baseball my entire life. My dad was like, "You can't play golf; it'll mess up your baseball swing." And even if I wanted to, my brother and my dad are both left-handed. Like, they both play golf and hit baseballs left-handed. So even if I wanted to, couldn't have like snuck out in the backyard and taken a swing because I'm a righty, and so I didn't have a set of clubs or anything like that I could use. Like, but I would watch the Golf Channel, which is the weirdest thing in the world, to somebody that doesn't play golf to watch golf, especially as a kid. Like, super weird that I would watch golf, but I did. And like, I would even watch like Golf Channel Academy, like when they were teaching golf, and I didn't play. So I don't know why I did that, but I did. And so yeah, I'm same way. Picked up golf at 18 after playing baseball my entire life. Didn't end up trying to pursue it in college. And then 6 months into college, I was bored and needed something competitive. And over Christmas break, me and a couple of buddies, they were like, hey, let's go play golf. And I was like, well, I need to buy some clubs first, so let's go. But we bought some cheap starter set of clubs. And then 6 months later, after I started playing, I was going and trying out for a college team. So yeah, dude, it's crazy how that works out. Like, almost extremely similar stories. And now, even though it's not my career as far as like teaching the golf swing, I'm the same way as like the performance side of things. Like, what I talk about is, for me, it's performance coaching. It's about unlocking a better level of performance. I've said it a few times, like taking your performance from plateau to peak, right? Instead of continuing on the same path that you're on, and being content with where you're at. Like, you got to do some work and get to that peak. But so, man, it's so crazy how many things align there. But let's just jump right into the podcast. The first thing I always ask everybody, and what I get your opinion on, is, what do you think, in your opinion, is like that number one thing, the catalyst for real lasting change. Again, it can be in athletics, golf, whatever you want to refer it to. But what do you personally think is like that number one thing that really gets people to change and have success in change? Because we all know that there's this cycle of, I want to change, but then they never do anything, or I want to change and then they get worse or whatever. What do you think is the secret to that, like actual change that makes you take your performance to the next level?
So I'll give you a little bit of backstory that I
Okay,
think will help
perfect.
answer the question.
Perfect.
So when I really started to teach rather than be in the golf business or work at a golf club, um, that was a massive learning curve because I had to understand that each individual was different, each individual's goals were different, and the process of helping them had to be intentional. And that was really making it tough for me at first. I had realized that because everyone was so different and where we needed to spend our time focusing, it became less about worrying so much about our result, and it became a lot about the process. And I would say one of the biggest things that I've learned, the more that I do this, is really getting the player to understand what that process looks like and where their intention needs to be. I have plenty of people who I've worked with where their goal was to just get out and play golf. And then on the flip end of that, I've had guys who come to me saying, I want to be able to compete in tournaments. And so almost laying out that roadmap for them and saying, this is how we have to go about doing that. And it's going to take a few steps before we make that big jump to the actual goal. That's, to me, the most important thing for each individual to understand. And it starts with them understanding that in order to really get the success they want.
No, I think that's perfect. And like I said, dude, that's exactly why I wanted, you know, to have your perspective on here is because of that whole you have to understand the way that multitudes of people work. It can't just be like, okay, I'm going to do it this way every single day and it's going to work. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. You have to understand the ins and outs, like on a very different level than where you're at. Like teaching my son, he doesn't understand things the exact same way that I do. But same thing, I coach his baseball team every year, and it's like I have to change the way I speak to each individual kid because some of them are super competitive, some of them are just getting started, and it's like, yeah, the ones that are super competitive, I take a different approach with, and I push them super hard. And then the ones that are just getting started, it's like, hey, listen, you're out here to have fun, so I'm gonna just root you on and not get super critical. I'm gonna give you tips here and there. If you don't do them, okay, whatever. You don't care, I don't care, right? The more you care, the more I'm gonna care. It's as kind of
Completely
how,
agree.
yeah. I mean, and it's that same level. Like my son plays basketball, and the first thing I did, walked up to the coach. I'm like, hey, push him as hard as you want. I said that's what he responds to. I said he doesn't respond to good job. You missed a
Right.
shot. Great job. You missed the shot. No, he does not respond to that. You're not going to get anything out of him if you just congratulate him for not doing anything. You have
I'll
to
tell
push him specifically.
I'll tell a lot of especially people who are at the beginning stages, the ones that say, I just want to get out there and play, or I just want to start playing. And then they eventually go out to the golf course and they say, should I be thinking about these things? What should I do? How should I compose myself when I'm out there? And you almost tell them there are no expectations when you go out there. The only thing that I need you to do is play. And if that means that it's a terrible day where you're not hitting anything well, or you end up surprising yourself and you do hit a couple well, the expectation was set from the start. And I do believe that where a lot of people get frustrated as they're trying to do something or they're trying to succeed is they set the bar so high that it almost becomes unreachable at first, and it kind of negates them from even wanting to attempt it anymore. So I do
You're
my
exactly
best
right.
to get them right there. Almost just baby steps. We're gonna work our way to that, but this is the first thing we gotta do. So
No, exactly. And what's so funny is I was just talking about something the other day, and like I think that everyone needs to learn this, not just a 9-year old, but there's a difference between trying to excel and trying to perform, right? If you want to excel, you have to start back at the beginning and break down everything and start over. It has to be, because like in my world of originally my main career path is a financial advisor, right? There's a difference depending on where somebody's at. When you're making a plan for somebody, it depends on where they're at, right? If they're 25 and they're saying, hey, what's the perfect retirement like savings plan? I can draw you a roadmap. I think you should start here and then do this and then do this and do this. Boom. We can do a lot of things. Pretty much wide open door. And we can create the perfect version, right? If you're 55, don't have time for that. We can't create the perfect version. This just doesn't work. But in sports and in performance, it depends on what your goals are, depend on what you're going to do. So if you want to excel, you got to break down everything and start back at zero, right? And I was, again, just having this conversation with my son. It's so crazy how much it relates to what I teach other people. And I guess it's just practice what you preach, I guess. But I told him, I don't care if you want to just have fun or not. But if you want to get better, here's how we do it. And right now it's basketball season, so we were practicing basketball. And I literally told him he has to stand like a foot from the basket and make X number of shots from the left, from the right, and from the center, from a foot away, and then we'll back up. Same thing in golf. If he wants to go play golf, we're starting at the green. You're going to learn to make putts. Then I'll let you hit some chip shots. Then I'll let you hit some pitch shots. Then I'll let you hit some iron shots. Then we'll worry about the driver. Because you have to understand, like, it all goes together, right? It all works together. A chip shot, a pitch shot, yes, there are some advanced techniques that are different. But it's all the same principle. You still are hitting ball first, right?
Absolutely.
It's the same principles. You got to start small and start slow. But nobody wants to start slow. Everybody wants to say, I know you're an Instagram guy, right? So I know everybody wants to, like, come on your page, watch 2 of your videos, and be a scratch golfer.
Yeah, a lot. I think, even going back to your point with your son and how you guys are starting small, what I've learned in my process is that if someone were to come see me for the first time, I don't call that first lesson a lesson. I say we're going to do a swing evaluation, and the point of the evaluation is to really understand where you're at. Just to give you an example, I started with a guy last week. He's about to be 60 years old. He says he wants more distance, more power behind the golf ball. And I've asked him, all of these questions just to get a feel for where he's at with that and what he's done up to this point to really get to that point for success for him. And then we take a look at his swing, and I tried to explain to him that, the only way we're really going to get to that end of the road is to understand that making solid contact is the first thing we have to do before we start swinging faster or talking about where power really is coming from. We have to get you centeredness of contact. And a lot of people, when they're starting, don't see those little things that really build into what makes it the end goal. Whether it's something as simple as that or something as simple as setting up to the golf ball correctly, I think a lot of people take that for granted, and there are a lot of coaches out there that start with the wrong things. They start with the driver. They start with the full swing. We want to get the understanding of your baseline, and that's really important if we're going to succeed. So I completely agree with you. I think that if people can take a step back and really get the full picture first, it helps them in their practice with the intention, because a lot of those simple things to people they're boring, right?
Don't you think it's also some of the instructor's fault of falling into the same trap of wanting instant results, because they want to say, oh, look at what I did with this player in 3 minutes or in 5 minutes or whatever it is. They want they want the same thing. They want instant results. They want to be like, hey, look at this shiny object over here. Look how good I made it look.
Yeah.
They
It's
don't want
there
the true
there's
change.
they definitely, a couple times you'll see the marketing aspect where it's, yeah, let me fix your swing in 10 swings. Or I'll give you this 2 week program and you'll start to hit the ball better. And I believe that's where a lot of people get discouraged, because within that time frame, that's where they realize it didn't work the way they wanted. They probably spent money that they didn't want to spend, but they took that leap because they realized they need the help or they need the change. And so I recommend it to everybody. Do your research before you commit to something and really understand what goes into it in order to succeed and get the goal that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that, I think a lot of people have this misconception of change. They think that performance or change or success or whatever is like a linear path, right? They all think that, okay, all right, I'm starting today, we're changing, and they think it's just going to be straight up, right? Like they think it's going to be linear, and it's not. There is, and getting ready for this podcast, I almost knew this was coming because it related to the golf swing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, if you look at a picture of Everest, right, there's a few different plateaus, but a lot of the times you have to go down to then go up, like climbing a mountain. You might be here right now, but in order to get up a level, you have to go down a little bit to then get there. Same thing when you're climbing stairs, right? Do you just, no, you have to bend your legs. Your body sinks to then go up. Jumping sinks to go up. In the golf swing to build power for the 60-year-old guy that's looking for the power, right? I'm not going to give away all your secrets, don't worry. But for the 60-year-old guy that's looking for that more power, it comes from the ground, right? And the new thing is everybody's chasing distance. Bryson and all that stuff, and Martin Borgmeyer and all these guys that hit the ball so crazy far on YouTube, and everybody's chasing that power. And the new thing is, up, down, up, right? You got to raise up in your backswing, then drop, and then raise back up, and that changing of levels and waiting and unwaiting. But it's the same thing in your performance, and people don't understand that. Like, there's going to be peaks and valleys. It's just that the valleys are higher, so are the peaks. To go back to my finance
Absolutely.
background, right? In an uptrend in the market, it's higher highs, higher lows. Yes, they're still down. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's
Right.
just progression. You got to take a
I
break
couldn't agree
sometimes.
more. I couldn't agree more. And that's where, um, you know, I couldn't agree, because in my world, very similar in the regards of, I'll give you a quote that one of my mentors, Jason Bale up in Jupiter, he's always said, can you do the ordinary things extraordinarily well? And that could relate to golf with your grip and your posture and your stance. That could relate to life with waking up and going to bed roughly around the same time, or taking care of your health a specific way each day. I think a lot of people, when they're trying to make big changes, they're uncomfortable with the change because there's no structure to what they're doing right now. And that's where, as a professional and as a performance coach, I can come in and say, this is how we structure it. And when they start to look at the higher lows as a, almost like they're backtracking, that's where I can come in and say, well, based on our perspective, you really are setting up much better, or you're hitting the ball more solid. It's just not going where we want. Now let's look at the next step. But it's it's being patient enough to be able to do that, and it's helping the player understand more of what we're saying with that process. It takes time to make these changes, especially if you're somebody who's been doing it for years and years, and it's almost second nature for you. That's how do we make this new change second nature? And once you tell it to them that way, their eyes open up and they really take that second to understand how long this process could actually take.
You said something there that I want to touch on real quick before I jump into the next thing, because again, you said two things that I really wanted to dive into. But you said doing the basic things extraordinarily well, right? And one of those things that, and you talk about, most people can't do that, and it's that discipline of being able to do the tedious task, right? And that reminds me of Cam Newton. I know he's like, a hot topic these days because everybody's hating on him for saying he's better than some of the people in the league, and it's like, it is what it is, right? But
Sure.
that's not the point. The point is, he changed his diet to where, I don't know what it's called, but it's where you only eat vegetables and fish, like you don't eat red meat or pork or whatever that's called. Who knows? Somebody probably knows. But and he said that it wasn't for any like belief reasons. It wasn't for dietary reasons. It was just to prove to himself that he could do it. Just for the discipline aspect. Most people that are looking for better performance would never go down that path of, let me give something up just to prove that I can. And if
Sure.
you want better performance, you have to, right? Like you said, you got to do the basic things well. The easy stuff. If you can't perfect the easy stuff, how are you going to perfect the hard stuff?
I completely agree. I'll give you another example of a guy that I've been working with for a few years now. When he first came to me, he had, from what he would tell me, severe lower back pain. He said every time I play golf, I'm coming home and I have to take care of my back, and it's making the game not as fun anymore. I'm almost afraid to go play, and I'm not sure where I need to start or what I need to look at. And once we got him on camera, it it was showing signs of something that was almost bending his spine backward at the top of his swing. They call it reverse spine pivot. But the idea was, when he had first come to me, that wasn't really the level of concern. I almost had to pull that out of him. He said, "Oh, I'm just inconsistent. I can't seem to hit the ball really well. If I'm missing, I'm doing this or this." And then I'd ask him, after watching the video, what else is going on with the game? And once we got to that part of it where he had mentioned the pain, I basically told him everything else that we're doing is irrelevant. Our first goal is to eliminate back pain, eliminate it, or take away enough of it so that you can enjoy the game again, and then we can talk about next steps and next goals. And he completely understood. He said no one had really taken that step with him before when looking at his game. And it goes back to what you said. Like, if you want to succeed, you really have to take that step back and understand, what are those basic things. Am I doing those basic things now? Should I be doing those basic things? And if I'm going to, do I have the discipline to do them consistently? It's not something that we do and then the next day we go play and we're expecting this big result, right? It's a process. It's a really, really long-term process.
No, yeah, it is. And it's so funny that you say it like that, because, it's so funny because it's seeing people that are like getting ready. Obviously, living in Myrtle Beach, we see tournaments come through all the time, and it's like seeing people that are getting ready for something, and they literally go to the driving range the day before, and they just expect that, like, all right, I'm gonna go to the range today, and I'm gonna play tomorrow, and it's like, yeah, you probably should have started 6 months ago. But it's so funny that you said that, but you've touched on it a couple of times earlier in your example, and then now talking about seeing it on video, and earlier you talked about perspective. Perspective is one of the biggest things I talk about. I've got an entire training video on perspective and changing perspective, shifting perspectives. Actually, I got more than one, but I mean, in my opinion, perspective is one of the reasons that most training fails. So I think that most modern day trainings, regardless of what genre they're in, sales training, leadership training, marketing training, golf training, baseball, whatever you want to call it, most of them fail because they lack or neglect individuality and perspective. They it's robotic teachers teaching robotic thoughts. It's just
Sure.
recycling the same stuff over and over again. and expecting people to go out there and then be able to succeed with it. But pretty sure that everybody at this point pretty much knows that people are different, right? Like there's some different freaking people out there, right?
Completely. And going
It's,
back to what you were mentioning about perspective, I I do agree in that idea that if you're not willing to, one, really look at the perspective you have now, and then talk about where you need to be if you want to succeed. If we want to succeed, we have to do something different, which means we may have to think a little differently, which means if there's any type of limiting belief that you're already walking into the conversation with, then we have to address that. I hear it all the time. There are the myths where it's keep your head down, keep your arms straight, make sure you follow through. You didn't look at the golf ball, and all of those things couldn't be further from the truth. And what I have to do sometimes when I'm explaining someone's game is hear them say those things and just question them. I'm like, why does the lead arm have to be straight? Why does the head not move? Where are you seeing that? What makes you believe that? And I get the same response every time. It's like, oh, well, that's what I was told, or
yeah,
I saw that, or I believe, like I've always believed that.
that's what they
And
say.
and then once you actually show them the video of a couple really good players today who are playing at the highest level, well, this guy moves his head, this guy bends his lead arm, this guy doesn't necessarily stay down. So why should you? If it's something that doesn't work for you, let's customize this and understand that our perspective can be a little bit more open to the change.
Yeah, so it leads into one of the things I really want to touch on is feel versus real. It's super prevalent in golf teaching and what people talk about in the golf world. And um, one of the training videos that I've got on my website, yeah, I literally pull it up and scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's article after article after article and video of feel versus real or feels not real. But I think that it relates to more things. Like other places don't talk about it necessarily. Like in in other areas, baseball, they don't really talk about feel versus real. In performance, they don't talk about feel versus real or anything like that. But it I think it's prevalent across the board of internal perspective or internal perception and external perception, right? The way
Mm-hmm.
that you feel, or the way that you feel that you do something, and the way that others perceive that you do it, or the way that the camera sees that you're doing it, right? And that's, you talked about seeing it on camera, and in a video I talk about the first time someone sees their golf swing on camera, how different it is, and how much the person is like in shock because what they think they've been doing or how they think they look versus what they see on camera is
Sure.
vastly different.
I would say 9 out of every 10 people will come to me and say, "Wow, I didn't realize it looked like that." Or or they'll say something like, "Wow, I really thought I had fixed that already." And the more I hear it, the more it helps them understand why the video is so important. It's reliable feedback. The video doesn't lie. It shows you exactly what's going on,
Facts are
whether you believe
facts.
it or
Facts
not.
don't lie.
Right. So that's where going back to your point, feel versus real. Sometimes showing them the real helps them with being able to, and I say this all the time, if we're going to make a lasting change and you do something without thought, the only way we change it is to exaggerate what we want to feel. If a guy is trying to change his game and there's something that we're doing with his backswing, I will have him do drills to exaggerate it. And all I'm doing is getting him into those positions so that he can feel them. And then I'll sit there and I'll just ask him, I'll say, what are you feeling? Because what I may say about what it looks like versus how they're interpreting it on their own, they could be two completely different things. And so it's important to give them that discovery process, is what I call it, where you're really allowing them to start going through those motions almost on their own. I'm just there to watch, but it's helping them feel the difference in what we need to get to so that the real starts to show.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Is like, how many different feels do you have to have in order, or how many different feels do you have for the same thing? Because everybody doesn't feel it the same way. You've got to give Joe and say, "Hey, Joe, try this." Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, hey, Joe, try this. Try this feel, this feel, this feel, this feel. You've got 5 or 6 different feels for one reel. And then you got to do that for every single one of the things you got to fix, right? You have to have it in the bag because everybody's perspective and perception is different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we're talking about, multiple feels, and I've learned this from so many mentors, is that when you're first going through the process of changing something, you'll have multiple things that come to mind. So, if I'm talking about the golfer with his reverse spine pivot, the first thing we have to do is prevent him from bending backward at the top of his swing. And so when I get him up to the top of his swing, I need to get him to feel that difference almost by exaggerating where his body is. And I'll ask him, "What do you feel?" "It feels like my head is way behind the golf ball." "Okay, good. What else?" "It feels like my chest is looking down at the ground versus up." "Okay, what else?" "It feels like my hips are so far this way now instead of this way." And so all I do is I write it down for them. If there's 3 feels or 5, whatever it may be, and I tell them we are going to practice with intention, focusing on one of those feels, and whichever one produces the best result, the best difference in what's real, that's what we're going to stick with. And a lot of the times, it as much as I do, golfers have that ability to get so thought oriented about how it needs to look or what they need to be thinking about in order to produce that. And it really makes it harder for them to just go out there and play. So that's, again, it goes back to what we said about creating your baseline, having the discipline to be able to go through those things and almost catch yourself when you're getting off track. It directly correlates to how we exaggerate and how we start to get our thought process straightened out.
Oh man, I'm so glad you said that about we get caught up in thinking, right? We get caught up in thinking, not performing. That's what I tell my teams. I tell, kids that I'm coaching. I tell adults that I'm coaching and helping with their performance and taking things to the next level. When it's go time, it's go time. React. All the work that you've put in, all the training, all the work, all the stuff that you do. That's when you think. That's when you work on the fundamentals. That's when you take it slow. That's when you put the stress on yourself and all of those things. But when it comes time for performance, when it's go time, you may have one little key, one little trigger word, one little thing. But that's it. It's not thinking. It is reactions and it is performance time. It's time to turn it on. What was all that work for? It was for now. Let the
I
work
agree.
speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where if someone's working with me, I'll tell them, listen, I know we had our first lesson today, or I know we're only 5 lessons in, but every time you decide to go play golf, I'm not going to be so worried about what your swing is doing. I'm going to be more worried about covering our bases. If our base is to really get good with your setup, then at least make sure when you're out there playing, your setup is where it needs to be. That kind of becomes their one thought, because when the swing is this dynamic motion that within a split second, once we take that club back, we really aren't thinking so much about what's happening or what could be going on. It's more a reactionary thing. That takes time to change. And that's where, when we're practicing, when we're exaggerating, when we're taking it slow, which a lot of people don't like doing, they like doing things at full speed. And I will always say, if we can slow it down and really understand it for what it is, when you go to swing, you almost want to get into this mode of like, okay, how am I supposed to do this? That's how we break the habits that you've built over time. That's how we really make those changes. We start very intentional. We allow you to go through that process where your sole focus is just to improve your extraordinary things. Those ordinary things make the difference, and that's where I've seen some really impressive and incredible results from a lot of my students.
And what I think is so crazy that, we all have done it, but we get in our own way because the body and the mind are exceptional machines. They react and recover without us knowing, right? In the golf swing is a perfect example of, oh, I got in this position and then my body reacted and did this, right? And it could still produce a good shot even if you did something bad. In sales, in performance, in your career, in other whatever it might be. If we just let it happen, a lot of the times we'll be in a better spot than just being like, "Oh my god, I didn't do that right. Oh gosh, I didn't say that right. Oh my, And I tell people this all the time, like, especially salespeople, but really anybody, when they go into a conversation, they're like, "All right, well, what do I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready." It's a conversation. What are you getting ready for? How do you know what's going to be
Sure.
said? Like, you really think that you can predict what that person's going to say?
Right.
I don't know if they got 6 kids or 12 kids. I don't know if they got any kids. They might hate kids. I don't know. And the
Sure.
second I get in there and say I got 2 kids, they might be like, "Well, you're stupid," or "Oh my god, why don't you have more?" I don't know what they're going to say, right? You can't say I'm not ready yet, or what am I going to say, or this, that, the other, like panicking. You have to rely on the reactions. Let your body and your mind do what it's built to do. It is built to overcome issues, right? Humans have survived and survived and survived and survived because the body and the mind are there to overcome,
I agree.
adapt, and overcome, right?
I agree.
It's so crazy to me how many people want to get in the way of that.
It's almost like they're trying to steer themselves into this new role rather than let it happen. And that's why, when we look at everlasting change, it's the discipline, and there's a certain level of confidence that you fully believe in what you're doing. And the only way that you can believe in what you're doing is to have some level of structure with that process. If that process is no good, or you feel like, okay, I'm trying this, let me try this now, or let me try this now, and the intention is never the same, it 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 immediately brings anxiety and fear. Whether you're a golfer or whether you're in business, you have that fear and anxiety because you haven't built the structure to really set yourself up to just flow. And it's one of the things that I've talked about with sports psychologists who are in the world of golf. They understand that clarity equals confidence. Clarity, the idea that what we're doing, how we're going about doing it, is really allowing us to free our mind and trust this process, no matter what the result becomes, right? We're about making that process consistent so we can really have that confidence. It's really important.
I'm glad you said that word, clarity, because I think it goes along with what I said earlier with the individuality and perspective. And one of the things I talk about, the first step of real lasting change and success is understanding your perspective of who you are, right? Not who you want to be, not who you hope people see you to be, but who you are. And I think that is clarity. You have to get clarity on who you are and where you're going, or what your path is or your mission is. You have to have that clarity Because if you don't, what are you doing? You can't be confident in what you're doing. You can't be confident in understanding your actions because you don't even know who you are, or you don't even know what you are or what you're doing, because you have no clarity in what your goal is as a human, right? If you don't understand who you are, whether it's, well, again, golf, sales, whatever it might be, if you don't understand who you are, then even seeing the external, even seeing that perception of someone else, the video camera, a coach, whoever it might be, how are you ever going to make progress? Because what they're saying is not going to make sense, because you have shifting perspectives of yourself.
Absolutely. There's a, I'm really glad you brought that up, because anytime I hear from a golfer that they're at that point and they're burnt out and they don't have the energy anymore to really figure it out on their own, that that loss of energy comes from how much thinking they have to do every time a golf club goes into their hands. And so some of what I'm doing with them is to help simplify. That's why my company is called Swing Simple. It's this idea that in order for us to really trust and believe that we're going to make everlasting change, we have to start with really simple concepts. And I I I fully believe, whether it's a competitive athlete who's trying to take it to the next level, or your 15 handicap who wants to get into the single digits, they their process of how they go about things for the most part is similar. You really are trying to set up the basis for them. Where we start to customize and fine tune is all dependent on the goal they want to accomplish. And once you do that, I can honestly say it is amazing seeing some of the relief that comes off of people after the first lesson or the first two or three lessons. Like, I'm finally making the changes because I understand what I'm doing and I understand how to go about doing it. And that's where I hope that as golf moves forward and as the game really starts to grow, I hope that more and more coaches start to follow this kind of structure where you're really helping the golfer understand what goes behind making lasting change. It just helps with their focus. It helps with, like I said, just freeing them up, allowing them to go out there and play. No worries, no expectations. We're just going to cover our bases. We're going to be very disciplined with the things that we need to start with. And when those changes in our swing happen, it's because of the consistent work that we've been doing on the back end.
No, and I love the simple aspect. So early on in my journey of teaching and training and all of those things of being in leadership, um, I was almost afraid of that simple word, right? Um, Selling a service to somebody, and then you teach them, or selling a service to a company, and then you teach them whatever you're going to teach them, and then they go, oh wow, that was simple. I was scared of that word because it's like, man, I almost feel like I didn't provide enough value, right? If they think it's simple, then they're gonna be like, oh well, why do we just pay him? But the problem is, most people can't make it simple. Most people
Absolutely.
overcomplicate everything, and simplicity and clarity and perspective and all of those things that we've been talking about, but especially simplicity, is the value.
I agree. I
That's the
agree.
value, not overcomplicating it.
I've had I've had lessons where the lesson was over in 20 minutes, and
Oh, that's, oh
typically
man.
when I'm doing lessons, it's an hour long. And I'll ask them, I'll say, okay, we've basically diagnosed what the issue was. I've told you how to go about fixing it. I've told you how to simplify your thought process. Do you want me to sit here and watch you for the next half hour, 40 minutes? And typically, when they're just starting, they do. And I have no problem doing that. But there are some people where it's like, okay, we're done. That now it's time for you to just go about doing it. Um, that was one of the biggest challenges for me when I started, was I felt that in order for me to really almost prove myself to the client or prove myself to the golfer, I had to show them something they've never heard before, or I have to explain something that was going to blow their mind. And that's not the case. They want you to break it down so that it's simple. That's why they're paying you. That's why they came to see you. And everything that I'm doing now with the people that I work with is almost just keeping them on that track. It's so easy to get off track and complicate it again because we're surrounded by it. I mean, imagine if you're a golfer and you're going out to play with your buddies and you're not necessarily having the best day and you just started the lessons with me, and so some things feel a little different than they normally do, and your friends watching are going to want to help you, and they're going to tell you those limiting beliefs that, hey, you really got to keep yourself, you got to keep your head down, or the head or the lead arm really needs to stay straighter there. I think you're swinging it too far back. I think you need to shorten it. And it's so easy for those things to get into someone's head because all that person is trying to do is help, but they don't understand that it can really hurt them because it's just crowding the thoughts, it's crowding the mind again. It's making the process of changing something even more complicated because you're focusing on four things instead of one. Going back to what we said, if there's in that lesson three or four things that the golfer's thinking about, physically exaggerating the feels, I'll tell them your mantra is the one thing that you've practiced where it felt the most different, or we saw the most difference on camera. That is your thought. And if you think about anything else when you go up to hit a golf ball, if you start to think about what the swing needs to feel like, or how fast you need to swing, or where the position needs to be, or whatever it is that gets away from that thought, that's where we step off. We have to step off the ball and reset ourselves. And I don't think enough people do that. I think they're so worried about all of the other things, the results, the people they're with, the things that start to cloud their minds. I think that's where a lot of people get into trouble.
So one of the things you said in there was, even if it takes 20 minutes into an hour lesson and things are better or we accomplish what we wanted, I will cut it short. Preach. Please preach that, because I've had, I don't know how many salespeople, or normally salespeople, that just because they book a certain amount of time, they feel like they got to be there for that amount of time. And they ruin a sale because 5 minutes in, somebody said yes, or 5 minutes in, somebody showed interest, and they're like, well, I'm 5 minutes in. I got to take up the next 25 minutes because I booked 30 minutes. It's like,
Sure.
No, you don't. I don't care if you booked an hour and it's 5 minutes in. If they
Absolutely.
said, if they hit the trigger word, go get the heck out the door. Well, all you're going to do is mess it up. And it's the same thing as what you're saying, is like the simple, don't let it get overcomplicated. Keep it simple. But that's what happens in groups, right? Everybody thinks that this is a super complicated process, right? Oh, that person must understand something that we don't know because this is complicated. That's why the average person can't do it. No, the average person complicates it. The
Absolutely.
elite simplify it.
If you ever watch, sometimes on social media, they'll post videos of the best players, the day before the tournament starts, and they're doing their practice round I've seen this so many times where they'll ask them, "What's your thought here?" And typically, when you're hearing the player's thought, it's some of the most simple things you can think of. And that's where a lot of people can get into trouble, as they think in order to achieve their goals or get to the next level, it has to be really tough and complicated, and they have to almost struggle to get there. And that's the main reason why you would bring in a coach. The coach isn't there to give you that piece you've never heard before. It's something you've heard, you're just not implementing it now. And so if I'm in that lesson and 20 minutes or 25 minutes have gone by and I say, okay, is there anything else you wanted to discuss? And they'll say, well, I really just want you to sit here and kind of help me with this or understand it. I'll say at this point, it's the time now. There is time you have to put in. You didn't come to me to hang out for an hour. You came with me to help you understand what to change and why you need to change it. And we've done that. Some people it takes longer. Some people it's 20 minutes. So it's really just like we've said, getting back to the perspective, getting back to the intention, having the discipline to take those steps, small steps, to make the biggest changes. That's where the everlasting success really can come from.
So as you were saying that, it cracked me up, and I was like laughing in my head because, like you said, there's always the reporter, right? Whether it's golf, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, they go up to the after something big happens, and they go up to them and they start asking these questions, and you'll get these viral memes of like the person saying something back, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh my God, professional athletes are so stupid. If it wasn't for this, they wouldn't succeed in life because it." But I think it's the other way around. The
Totally.
broadcaster is trying to overcomplicate a super simple situation. They don't know what they were thinking. They've trained their whole life to be in that moment. So in that moment, all they did was react. So that's the times that you get the. So what were you thinking? I was just thinking, quarterback gonna throw the ball. I'm gonna catch the ball. And then everybody's at home like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. He probably can't spell his own name. But that's what he was thinking. I'm gonna catch the ball, or I'm gonna score a touchdown, because that's how you succeed. It's not about, okay, I'm gonna run 3 feet in a 12-degree angle. Then I'm gonna go left for 5-degree angle. Like, no, that's not. They're not thinking that. Like, I promise you, when they're running routes on the field, since we got football season's getting to the end, but they're not thinking about exact number of steps and what am I going to do at the top of this route? What a da 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 da. I literally heard on the New Heights podcast for Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce in the AFC Championship game, the opening drive, Travis Kelce makes this crazy catch right for a touchdown, like just last second, turns around, super low ball, catches it. And Jason's like, dude, walk us through that catch. And he's like, man, I turned around and that ball was 5 feet away from me. He's like, I just had to guess. He's like, I just had to grab it. He's like, I don't know. I turned around, that ball was 5 feet in front of my face. I didn't know it was coming. I had no idea where it was. I turned around and it was just there.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And it's, going back to what you're saying, imagine if in that moment he was so thought-oriented about what he needed to do to make that happen versus allow himself to get there. It's something that revolves around the sports world, whether it's football, whether it's golf. In golf, typically the guys who shoot the course record and then get interviewed afterward, they say, what were you thinking about? And typically they say, I wasn't thinking really about anything. I was just kind of in the flow.
In the moment. They always say I was just extremely present, one shot at a time, in the moment.
In the moment. And if I was talking to, one of the sports psychologists, he says at some point it's going to feel like brushing your teeth. You're not sitting there thinking about how to brush your teeth. You've been doing it for so long that once you start doing it, it just becomes a habit. It starts to become second nature. And it's why I've I've decided to label myself as a performance golf coach because at some level, it's helping the player perform more than it is instructing them or teaching them. It's getting them to that point where they can actually achieve the goals and start to be consistent with those big things they've always wanted to accomplish. Um, it's it's to me one of the most important things is to help them understand that at some point we take all of this work and we just start to let it happen, and that takes time as well. So my biggest thing when it comes time to stuff like that, and you've mentioned it, is really to be in the moment, be present, allow yourself to do the things that you're trying to accomplish without necessarily getting so internal. I'll tell golfers all the time, one of the best ways to get out of your own head when you're on the golf course is to get external. Start with your sight. So pick out things that you're seeing that you're probably not even paying attention to, or start with things that you can hear, right? What are the things that are coming to mind that just kind of stick out? It immediately gets you out of your headspace. It allows you to get back into that moment. And the more you can do that, the better typically you will play.
So for me, one of my I think that my like breakthrough moment in my personal performance in golf was just messing around during practice and trying to imitate other people. Like, oh hey, here's my John Daly swing, here's my Jim Furyk swing, or here's my this swing. The first time that I would do it, I'd hit it great. And then if I tried to imitate them a second time in a row, I wouldn't hit it as well. Because the first time, all I was thinking about was the picture of their swing, how their swing looks, and I was just trying to recreate that. The second time, I'm thinking about what I did the first time. And I think that's a lesson for everybody is as soon as we start thinking instead of just picturing the end result, a lot of the times that's where we fail because that's where the complication comes in.
Totally, absolutely. There's this concept. Um, Feedback is real, right? And anything else is just an illusion. And for us, the feedback is in the video. It's in what the ball does. It's getting back to understanding those aspects. And I do believe that as the game is continuing, all of these modern technologies are going to help people understand those processes more. It's almost the hyper focus to get them there because otherwise they can get very, very complicated.
Yeah, I don't practice
So,
without a launch monitor now. I mean, it's
so,
facts. You have to have
and
facts.
I'll tell someone when they first start working with me, if by the next time you come in, if you haven't bought a tripod on Amazon or something to record yourself so you can see these things, then don't expect anything different, right? I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink. It's getting you to that point where, okay, this is how the changes are made. This is how I allow myself to enjoy because I have clarity and I can confirm that clarity with my feedback. And it makes you so confident the next time you go play. You're like, I know what I'm doing. I've seen it, I've worked at it. I feel that now I can just step up and trust it a little bit more than I did yesterday, and that's where, I mean, I've had some incredible success stories of guys who started shooting in the 90s and then they end up shooting par, or I've had guys who, competing in a tournament, he couldn't shoot anything better than 85, and he ends up winning 8 events in his first year with me, just because they were devoted to taking this process the right way without any preconceived notion on how it should be done or the way they should go about it. They were just open to the understanding that this is the best way to make the changes you want.
Say that one more time about you said results are the reality. What did you say is reality?
So the feedback
Feedback.
is the reality, right? When you're out there and you're working at something, if you feel that you're doing something and then you look at the video and it's not, that's where the biggest changes come from, right?
So
And a lot of the times people don't take that time to do it.
right. So I lost the first word because I got on sidetracked on thinking of how powerful that is, because I used to say, everybody's heard it, and I did used to say it in certain situations, and now I have a caveat to it: is perception's reality, right? Everybody's heard perception is reality. Now my caveat to that is external perception is reality. What people see is the reality, not internal, because it's not just, oh, well, I think that I'm a scratch golfer, or I think I'm the best salesperson. My perception is that I'm the best in the world. That ain't reality. Feedback makes it reality, like you said. Or
Absolutely
someone
right.
else understanding it and saying, hey, man, I recognize what you're doing. You are the best in the world at this. That makes it reality. The fake it till you make it culture might work in certain situations. Instagram, social media, whatever one you want to talk about. And I think it's funny because now a lot of them are getting caught, right? Oh, we got a perfect marriage, and then dude gets arrested for domestic violence, or the girl gets arrested for domestic violence. And it's like, dang, y'all struggling up there now, right? They put on this thing, but in reality, we all know social media ain't reality. In reality, in performance, in your day to day, reality is how it comes across to everyone else. And people can see through the veil of fake it till you make it. And as much as people want to fake it on social media, even there, the fake it till you make it doesn't necessarily work. The people that make an impact on social media and stay and have that lasting power to stay there and continuously put out content and grow and grow and grow are the people that are super genuine and have worked their butts off to get there. And all the people can see that they're genuine and they say, man, I am invested in this person's story because I know they're genuine. They can
Totally.
see that. If you get anything out of this podcast, please stop fake it till you make it culture. It does not work. People will not. It will not get you there. And trust me, I've been there. I've been in sales. I've been in tons of different situations. The logo for this podcast, the logo for my entire brand, is a monkey or a gorilla wearing a suit with a hat on. Why? Because somebody told me in a meeting one time, it was a networking meeting, oh, you can't sit in a professional setting and have a hat on, especially with a suit. Why not? I set the rules. I run my own brand. I can do whatever I want. That is what they think. I've sat in, I don't know how many meetings, in a hoodie, in a hat. I've had a few libations sometimes because everybody knows business gets done on the golf course. And
Absolutely.
it's not about trying to be the person you see on social media. Oh man, Brad Lee. Oh, he's like the best salesman in the world. I gotta look just like him and say exactly the same things he says. Why? That's not who you are.
Right. A coach once taught me, the paint on the car can look great, but what's going on with the engine? And that's where the fake it till you make it approach, it
That's going
really
on TikTok.
doesn't go it really doesn't go as far as, it really, to me, it really does not go as far as working on those core things, then we start to get to the external stuff. Then we start to worry about the smaller things that may not look the way you want. We can get there, right? But let's really focus on our roots. Let's get back to the things that help us grow more than anything and quicker than anything. It may not seem quick to you because I know in society it's a lot of I want my results and I want them yesterday. It's really getting to that level of, okay, the way I'm going to change this as fast as I possibly can is to start with my engine, make sure that's working the way it's supposed to, and then once my engine is good, then I'll repaint the car. I can't do it the other way around. It's not going to get me very far.
You're 100% right, and as you were saying that, I've thought about, it's so funny because back, before, I don't know, maybe the 80s, 90s, hustler meant something different. Now hustler means, oh, I hustle, I grind, I work so hard, blah 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 blah. Back then it was, oh man, this dude looks like a scrub. I'm gonna go play him for some money, and then you get destroyed, right? You got hustled for your money because dude didn't look like he could do X, Y, or Z, and then he destroyed you. And I think that the hustler culture out there needs to get back to the hustle of screw what it looks like, get results.
Yeah, absolutely. Become invested into your process so we can get the results. Process plus feedback equals results every single time.
Well, I think that we have gone into way more than anybody can digest. They're probably gonna have to watch this like 8 times. Guys, watch it 8 times at least. We need some views, guys. No, but man, we've gotten so much out of this episode, and I hope that the viewers are getting so much out of this episode. And again, it's like we talk fast. I know I get animated and things like that. Like, feel free to hit that pause button, guys. It's okay. Pause it, write it down. That's what it really takes to get better. But Harrison, man, I want to thank you so much for being on today. Shout out your company, shout out your socials, where we can find you. They'll all be linked in the bottom too, but go ahead and shout them out.
Sure. So if you wanted to work with me or if you wanted to speak with me, you can go on to swingsimplegolf.com. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see you can book a free consultation to at least talk to me. If you're living in South Florida, great. You can come see me at our facility. It's about 5 minutes from the downtown Las Olas area of Fort Lauderdale. And if not, we can always do something remote. I'm always happy to help. And I appreciate you having me on, Josh.
Yeah, man, we got so much out of this, and I can't wait to hear the feedback because I know that there's so much in here. And again, man, thank you so much. And guys, stick around. Next week is gonna be crazy. We're shifting gears. We're staying in the athletics. But I got a guy coming on that I can't wait. You guys are gonna be super pumped. We're going to the NFL, but not in the way you think. It's gonna be so awesome. There's so much change happening with this man. And man, I can't wait for it. So you guys stick around. This is the Original Savage Podcast. Let's go.